Hello, everyone. Welcome to Chasing Collectibles Catchup. I'm Tyler.
I'm Tim.
And with us today, we have a very special guest, Randall. Tim, why don't you tell us a little bit about our guest we have with us today?
Randall's a friend of mine who I had met on Facebook a few years ago in one of our geek groups. And Randall is big into a number of pop culture things, but mostly comic books and DC. He has, a good amount of knowledge and things that he can share with us, and I thank him for being on with us today.
Yeah, thank you for having me here.
Tyler, you want to?
Yeah, we'll jump right in. Basically, how we always start with any of our folks that are involved in comics is, how did you first get the comic book bug?
Well, as a kid, one of the major influences was the Christopher Reeve Superman film, and I think, kind of like being exposed to an icon, like a character like that, you start to see other characters through film, television, cartoons. And then eventually, I think, I was just such a fan of Superman at that point that I thought, you know what, I should check out the comics. I originally wanted to start when they were doing the Death of Superman story arc, but my mom said no. She was already buying me Goosebump books. So I was just like, but then a few years later, and I actually have this here to show off. It was actually the good old Wizard magazine.
Cool.
They started doing the Electrical Blue Superman story arc. I was very intrigued by it. Like, it caught the corner of my eye at this gas station. And I thought to myself, like, wow, this is a cool look, like new powers, new look. I was intrigued. I wanted to know more about it. And so I remember mentioning to my dad about it, and he went and he managed to find like a copy of it. And then I kind of just started reading comics at that point. Started with Superman. But thanks to Wizard magazine, there were days where I got bored and I would flip through the magazine and actually read it instead of looking at the pictures. And so as I was reading the articles, I was actually learning, and I was, being educated on like other comics, other series. So I started picking up more Wizard magazines, and obviously they would do like promotions and talking about like what stories are coming out. So huge thanks to Wizard magazine, even though they're not around anymore.
Yeah.
But huge thanks to them is like what helped me really get into collecting other comic books, but of course Superman being the inspiration.
Yeah, I really growing up too. I mean, Wizard was really helpful to me, before the age of the internet, with getting a lot of information on conventions.
Oh yeah.
Anything that's going on with artists and writers, news on anything happening on Marvel and DC, and then the big launch of Image, all that stuff. I learned so much from those magazines. I love the Wizard. Just a question though. So I mean, you started with Superman. Do you have a favorite hero now that you gravitate to, and somebody for whatever reason that you gravitate to him?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, just first being exposed to Superman, like I felt like I've had a connection with that character. So he still is my like very top favorite superhero. But I also realized, because of like so many different books, publishers, universes, I think the fair thing to do was to basically break down like, at least top 2 favorite over at DC and top 2 favorite over at Marvel. So like obviously Superman, and growing up as a kid, I've always been infatuated with the color green. Like green was like my favorite color. So I was naturally drawn to Green Lantern. And I was picking up Green Lantern back when Kyle Rayner was Green Lantern. So this was after the whole Hal Jordan becoming Parallax, and then going crazy, and then sacrificing himself and dying, all those great stories. And then for Marvel, I really related to Peter Parker. Like I related to Spider-Man. He's your everyday kind of superhero. He was like the kid that got picked on, and then he got powers, and then just growing up with those powers, and like he had real world problems, like he had trouble paying his rent, he had responsibilities, and like the sad thing is he's out there trying to help people, save people. He's literally trying to do good stuff, good things, and yet bad things happen to him. And I can very much relate to that. Like I consider myself like a really nice person, good person. It's that age old question, like, why do bad things happen to good people, So that was the biggest thing that I connected with Peter Parker. And then I think my second favorite superhero for Marvel, Captain America. There's just something about Captain America. Like, I think that kind of like is very close to like Superman, the whole leader, or leadership values, morals, just the confidence, and then just wanting to do good, So I was kind of just drawn to that, and it was neck and neck with Wolverine.
Yeah.
I did like Wolverine also, but I felt like Wolverine, very much like Batman, it was just like almost everybody's like favorite superhero.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
oh, go ahead, Tim.
I feel like Wolverine is almost like he's almost like the Magneto of the X-Men. He just does whatever he has to do to get the job done. He gets his hands dirty when he has to get them dirty, and then
I mean, that was, I think, he was the rebel, right? He was I'm a good guy, but I'm not going to follow the rules. I'll break the rules and do what it takes I'll do it my way, like I'm not gonna, and that's why I think that's why the relationship between him and Cyclops was always great, because Cyclops was always very by the book and Wolverine wasn't, yet they were both on the same team and having to work together, and that conflict, and I think it makes it for fun storytelling.
Yeah, we definitely, and then they also had Jean in the mix of them.
Yeah, the love triangle.
Well, I think what's great about some of the characters you mentioned, and we all love comics and the superpowers are great and all that, but I think what makes superheroes so great is that they really show us like the best of what we'd like to see in ourselves and what inspires us. All the characters you mentioned, all have traits that are admirable and people can look up to.
I agree.
So Peter Parker's powers are cool, and Captain America's strength is cool, but I mean the core is like the character themselves. That makes them so relatable and inspiring to so many people.
They're definitely their origins and like what drives them, what motivates them. And I think the struggle that, as time passes, we go through different time periods, because these are characters that were created like Spider-Man was in the 60s, Captain America was obviously in World War II era. So like they're always having to retcon or update these characters, and as we evolve, as like society changes and how we look at things and do things, sometimes it can be hard to relate to those characters because they're at this point a different time period. So you kind of always have to evolve those characters so you can keep relating to them, and that can definitely be a challenge or a struggle for some writers, especially writers who maybe personally don't even connect with the character, but maybe they just came up with an idea that they wanted to try out.
Right. Well, speaking of like challenges and things evolving over time, I know you work for manage a comic book store, and the comic book industry is really something that's changed over the years to, comic book stores originally, in the 70s and 80s and 90s were like, I don't want to say the actual word I'd like to use for this, but people would say, they were like basements, they were all these dark and all this stuff. And then, they become a little more hip and sleek, but there are also, we've heard lots of stories of comic book stores that are struggling to stay open. I know the one that we used to work at ended up closing for a couple different reasons, but because it's hard to get people to come in. And, the movies are great, but, that often doesn't translate to book buyers. So I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about, what it's like managing a store, and, if you could touch on some of those challenges.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. It's for people who haven't personally experienced running a comic book store, because I know like there's this idea, this image that people have, like, oh, I wish I had my own comic book store. And believe me, all those like fun ideas that you have, all the fun, the camaraderie, all the things that you would enjoy that you think you would out of a comic book store, you would get that. But a lot of times people don't see like it's still a business and there's still responsibilities. And one of the biggest things I think many people are consistently stressed about is money, and so that plays a huge factor, of course. Like you need to be profitable, you need to make money, you need to know how to run a business if you're to do all the fun things you want to do at a comic book store. So some, like people who work at a comic book store, they don't have to deal with all the business side of it. They're just being paid to do a job and work there, so they don't have that level of stress that they have to deal with. They just get to work and enjoy the experience. But the owners, those are it's a lot of responsibility, a lot of stress on their shoulders, and everybody's different, everybody's raised differently, and education plays a huge role in like how people are going to operate and run their business. So there's a lot of people out there that are financially illiterate. They don't know how to budget, they don't know all these other things. But time and time again, they always say that when you experience it, when you actually try and you go for it and you do it, like they say, most successful business owners, even their very first businesses that they run, for the first time, second time, third time, they fail. But what they do is they try again and again and again. But what they do is they learn all the things that will benefit and help them out. So anything that they screwed up on, any mistakes they made, they know not to do that the second or third time around, fourth time around. And so as you're learning from all those mistakes, as you're getting better, you eventually will have a successful business. So, and I think the big thing is just learning how to deal with the stress. Now, as far as strategies on what comic book stores need, nowadays, so many things are online. Look at Amazon. Amazon is one of the most successful companies, businesses, and the majority of all their business they make online. And so that's the thing, is like a lot of store owners that went out of business, they had an old school way of doing business. They never adapted. They never knew how to learn new skills and add other things in order for them to continue profiting or better themselves. So eventually they ran out. And they closed up. So yeah, in this case, like, you need to be able to sell on eBay. You need to be able to get an online store. You need to be able to, social media is so huge in society now, almost everybody's using it, and so you got to use that as well. If you're a business, you got to market yourself, advertise, let people know who you are, where you're at, so there's just a lot of stuff. And so for people with the old school way of thinking, it can be very overwhelming, and so you have to be open-minded, and you have to be patient, and you have to just structure your life and get organized and sit down and say, okay, I'm going to spend 1 hour every day learning a new skill, learning this, and I'm going to apply that to better myself and better my business, and you'll see a lot of positive results. You see a lot of great results, and there's nothing wrong with like failing, like as a young kid, I always had a fear of failure, but like, thanks to like social media, thanks to like, people giving their advice, that's the thing, is like, if you're willing to, and you are able to take people's advice, you're educating yourself, you're bettering yourself, and you're putting yourself in that right mindset, so like one of my favorite sayings, and I heard this from Will Smith of all people, he said that failure is practice for success. And so sometimes when you hear stuff like that, like it's like something clicks in your brain, and it opens up the way you see things, and it gets you, like excited, like, okay, what can I work on? What can I do?
Yeah. And I don't want to get too much down a rabbit hole, but you mentioned social media, and I'm in my paying job, I'm a teacher. And when I hear about, success and failure and all that, my kids get very stressed out about stuff. And sometimes they look at social media, they see what other people are posting. They're like, man, I'm a failure. And I'm like, guys, on social media, people put their highlight reels, people aren't putting the failures on there.
Exactly.
And, you got to keep on trying. You don't see the trying again and again on people's social media. You see, hey, the success, and the same with,
Absolutely.
businesses,
I think what I would recommend, and this guy has been really, really great for social media, and he's good for anybody, whether you're a kid, teen, young adult, old person, doesn't matter. The message that he sends out it's for anyone and everyone to use. His name's Gary V, and so people will ask him his opinion, and he's honest, he's open, but more importantly, I think he tries to put out there positivity. And so that's the thing, is like it's so very easy for us to like get angry with ourselves or down talk ourselves, and like there's even like little techniques also where like they talk about like, oh, I'm such an idiot today, or oh, I look like crap, I look horrible, or oh, you're a moron. Anything negative that you're saying out loud or saying to yourself, that's another trick as well, because it's like your body and your brain, they don't know the difference. You know the difference, but the subconscious, all of that, it doesn't know the difference. So when it hears the negativity, if you're taking that negativity and you're pointing it towards yourself, there's a part of you that's you're basically teaching yourself to be bad, like you're teaching yourself that you're not a good person when in fact you are a good person. And it's like, so like anything negative out loud that you're saying or doing towards yourself, the technique should be stop. Don't even say it. Positive affirmation, they'll even say stuff like, say something nice about yourself, and then do it every day, like to the point where like you start to actually believe it. And then when you believe it, you feel better, and it makes a world of difference.
I hear what you're saying, man. I really like what you're putting out right now.
Thank you.
As we, while you're managing a comic book store, Chasing Collectibles is trying to do a side business also.
Oh yeah.
Of selling books on top of trying to do educational videos and fun stuff with people.
Yeah, connecting with people, absolutely. Like that's a huge thing, and I think that's great what you guys are doing.
So yeah, I hear you, man. Really appreciate that. So moving on to another question. I know you have done things with variant covers, comic books, and things like that. Can you tell us a little bit how you got into that and what it is that you were doing?
Yeah. So like currently right now, it's a strange dynamic. I have my own comic book business, which I called it Blank Variant Comics. The reason I called it Blank Variant Comics is because I've noticed through the industry that they keep making blank covers, which is great. The convention scene is very, very popular, and you have a lot of local artists that like people like to support. You have local artists that they like to do commissions on blank covers. So I put it in my mind that my goal down the road is to be the #1 supplier of blank variant covers. Because you'll have some stores, they'll order some covers, they'll probably have they'll order like 10 or 20, and eventually the goal is to sell them out. But I think down the road, you'll always have people, especially artists, that will look and, want to get blank covers for them to work on, and when all these stores are out of stock, so the goal is to financially do well enough to the point where I can have a huge amount of stock for years at a time, that would be the goal. But as far as variants go, that's why the name of my business is Blank Variant Comics. The variant business, it's essentially like Marvel, DC, any publisher that's printing more than one cover. You have a wide variety of variants. You have regular variants that are like normal cover price. Then you have retailer incentive variants. Then you have store exclusive variants where basically stores will work with the publisher. Usually there is a rep that a store can contact and say, hey, I'm interested in doing an exclusive cover for my store. So what they do is they coordinate through the rep, and the rep basically feeds all the information. I've been told that they have like a list of artists that might be available that they would say, okay, you can use this artist, And a lot of times they, if you want to use your own artist, you probably have to talk more with the rep and work out a deal, because there's like certain requirements, and then I think a lot of times the artist has to draw the cover, and the cover has to be approved in order for them to do the store exclusive. So it's a lot of hoops to jump through. I hope one day to do that. In fact, with the Electrical Blue Superman, I hope one day I can get a variant on
cool.
a Superman book made for that or something,
Yeah.
But yeah, or and since my business is called Blank Variant Comics, I can just maybe get my own blank covers made.
Mm.
I could always go that route. Now, the other thing that I do is I manage South Tampa Comics. I met a friend. I became friends with him through a mutual friend, and I always strike up conversations with people. And I think my favorite thing is when I talk to strangers. We I think it's segues, right? Like we talk about the comic book films, and then that kind of opens me up for the opportunity to ask them if they read any comic books. And so sometimes they'll say, oh, I don't read any now, or I used to back in the 90s, and then just back and forth with conversations. But the cool thing was, his name's Francisco del Toro Rios. Very friendly guy, very nice guy, very successful businessman. He's funding everything. He pays for the rent, he pays me a paycheck. He orders I order the product, but he pays for the product. So he's investing into this because this is something that he likes as well. Like he liked collecting comics from the 90s. So when we were talking, he just started asking me all kinds of questions, like, what do you have to do to get a comic book store? Like, what are all these things, like that you would need or is required, And thankfully, these were just like things that little by little over the years I learned, because this isn't my first time running a comic book business. 5-6 years ago, I created a comic book store, and it was called Thunder Road Comics. And it was just one of those, like, I got into an argument with the manager from Demolition Comics, and he basically just out of nowhere was just like, you think it's easy running a comic book store? He's like, man, he's like, I dare you to open your own store. You wouldn't last 3 months. And
you gotta open one.
That stuck in the back of my head. And then I got with a friend of mine who directed me to get information, and I kind of just took the plunge, and I went and I started the store. I found a place that was literally the size of a bedroom, and but it was a retail location spot, So like with Diamond Distributors, there's only 2 ways you can get an account with them to sell comics. You either have to have a physical retail location, or you had to have a website. And so I found a place for like $350 a month. Wow. And I was like, cool. And I had a retail location, and I was able to set up a Diamond account. And the mistake I learned from that first time running the business is get an accountant. It is not easy trying to like keep all the receipts and do it all yourself. It's very, very frustrating. So accountants are if you have the money, they're worth it. Their job is to make your job easier and make sure that you get to legally stay in business.
So from what I've gathered from Tim and from talking to you so far, you're kind of like a comic book renaissance man, because you do this blank variant stuff, you've run some comic book stores, you collect, and also you have some experience with grading.
Yes.
So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about what that's like, because we could do an entire episode, I'm sure, just on grading, which maybe we could one day.
Sure.
As we're talking, I'm just like, we got to have Randall back on, because this is awesome.
Oh, yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Oh, there's a lot of stories. I was very thankful for the opportunity. Like, and again, this came from having a comic book store. I met a very nice gentleman by the name of David McPike, who ended up starting his own comic book store called Pike's Comics. Very smart guy. He's very analytical. And anyways, he got to meet Steve Borak and became friends with Steve Borak, who is the president of CBCS Comics. And he had mentioned, like, oh yeah, they're always looking to hire somebody. And so he like kind of vouched for me. Like when things went south with my business, and it was more for personal reasons, like a death in the family, and it just became like very difficult to to help family and do the business at the same time. So I had it in my mind that I could always start the business over again, you know. So in within that moment, it was like family came first.
Mhm.
And so when the store was given up, now I was in the process of like, okay, I need to find a job. And that's where David McPike came in. That's where CBCS Comics came in. They were located in St. Pete. I'm in South Tampa, so St. Pete. They were downtown St. Pete. So with traffic, it was probably like a 45-minute, at the most a 1-hour drive.
Oh my gosh! Wow.
Yeah.
That's still for that kind of an experience, though.
Oh, worth it. Totally
Yeah.
worth it. For that experience, it's totally worth it. Yeah, the commute after a while, it really gets to you, you know, and it has a negative effect on you, you know.
Mhm. Yeah.
But yeah, no, just working there. I remember interviewing with Steve Borak, one of the nicest people. If you ever get a chance to meet with him, talk with him, or even interview him, he is one of the nicest people ever. You know, like even if he wasn't a comic book person, you'd be like, wow, this guy's just super friendly to talk with, you know. And he definitely loves comics. He's been doing it for a very long time. He originally was a grader, and actually I think helped started CGC. And he left CGC, and basically he was approached about running CBCS, and you know they made him a really good offer, and he took that.
Wow.
I heard. I think I heard about him years ago from a buddy of mine back in Jersey. He was telling me that story.
Oh yeah, he's hands down my favorite person at CBCS. Like usually, like when you have an employer, you have a boss. A lot of times you have certain bosses that will act a certain way, and you know, and a lot of times the attitude, the clashing, like you know, it's almost a common trope that you know people don't get along with their bosses, you know, and this was the opposite, you know, like I always wanted to hang out with Steve, you know, if I, you know, like he always told me too, like, hey, if you have any questions, you know, you want to learn more about, because there's different departments in the grading department. You have your modern graders, and then you have your graders that handle all of the older books, like Silver Age, Golden Age books. And so that's what Steve did, you know, like Steve, and not to mention like Golden Age books, you know, older books like that, they are much, much more expensive. In fact, I happened to be there when someone submitted a Action Comics #1.
Wow.
I managed to get a picture of it, of me holding it.
That's
It was
awesome.
cool because like the other grader, Wes, he knows I'm a huge Superman fan. And so we have this giant office where all the graders are all in one room. So that way, if we have any questions, like it's almost like an open forum. You can just, you know, yell across, not even yell across the room, but just talk across the room, be like, hey, Wes, I got a question about this, you know, and a lot of times he's like, all right, come over to the table. But anyways, he said, hey, he reached out to me. I'm sitting there grading or putting in notes. And he's like, hey, Randall, I got something here I think you'd really like to see. I'm like, yeah. So I get up, I walk over there, and there it is, an Action Comics #1.
Wow.
And he looked at me and he's like, you wanna hold it? And immediately I was just like, oof. Like I'm already instantly scared that I'm gonna drop it or damage this
Oh
book.
my
You
God.
know? And it's like,
It's
yeah.
like it was a 5.0, but it's just as good as at a 4.
Actually, this book was in really great condition. In fact, I think it ended up getting graded at a 9.0 or a 9.2.
What?
Wow.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
crazy.
Man.
That's how great of a condition the book was in. And I mean, as I was holding it and getting a picture with it, Wes turned and looked at me and he was like, don't drop this, man. You know, so I'm like, yeah, absolutely. You know, and but yeah, I mean, just something holding like that. And then at one point, I think someone submitted an older like Superman book. I don't know if it was like a Superman book or Action Comics, but the thing that creators used to do back in the day was they never liked signing on the cover. And then, you know, I don't even think, you know, Sharpies existed back then either. So like they were using pens. They would just take a pen and then they would sign it. But they didn't want to indent the cover. So they would actually open up the book and write on the first page on the bottom, and they would sign their name. So there was an older Superman book that was signed by Joe Shuster. So, you know, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster like are the co-creators of Superman. Shuster was the artist. And the thing is, from what I heard, is that Shuster never did as many signatures as Siegel. Like if you can go on eBay right now and probably find a Jerry Siegel, you know, signed Superman comic, but you probably can't find a Joe Shuster comic. signed, you
Yeah.
know? And so this person basically had it in their collection, and then there it was, Joe Shuster signed on the first page. And I
Wow.
just was like immediately jealous because I'm like, oh man, like, you know, like that's a hard to find signature, you know, and he had one, you know.
That is crazy.
My gosh.
Yeah.
Holding the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, and of course, it's a goal of mine in life to own a copy. Like I want to own every Superman comic that's existed, and so I know that obviously I'm gonna have to do a side hustle getting into real estate, and I'm gonna have
Yeah.
to like buy up a whole bunch of houses and then sell like 10 houses in 1 year, and then I'll have like a couple $1 million to buy a Action Comics #1, which I will probably lock up in a bank,
Yeah.
and then just
Yeah.
go and visit it like once every
Private
couple
security.
weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah. But
That's
yeah,
so cool.
CBCS is like but it's like any other job also, so there's good, there's ups and downs. There's going to be people that you work at the job that you don't get along with. There's a lot of people there with a lot of different personalities. Doesn't necessarily mean that they're bad people. It just means that they're different, and like everyone's not going to get along. Some people will clash, because you have different senses of humor, you have different ways of communicating. And so I didn't always have the best time at CBCS, because that's just normal. That's like any other job, like if you have a job where you get along with everybody and everything's going great, consider yourself 100% blessed. Because in my opinion, I think it's a huge rarity. But yeah, I mean, and then one of the things too was like it was independently owned. So you had the owners who basically, they their other businesses had nothing to do with like comics and grading, so this was like their first venture into it. And so they were thinking of ways to like, okay, how are we going to make this business profitable? And their simple solution was, you guys need to grade these books faster. And it's like, no, like, and I've always hated that in any business that you work at. If there's like a quota, if they're expecting you to work at a certain pace or speed, half the time it doesn't work, and that's because their simple solution is work faster. And
Yeah, because
that's really not the best solution.
yeah, you don't get the same quality of
That
work.
too, absolutely. I remember having a conversation with the manager who told me, hey, you really need to bump up your numbers. You see, so I told him, listen, if I do that, I'm going to make way more mistakes, and I don't like making mistakes. And his response was, so you're telling me you can hit these numbers? And so in his mind, he's like, don't worry about making mistakes. That's what quality control is for. Quality control's job is to catch those mistakes. But same problem. If you have quality control having to work faster, they too are going to miss those mistakes. So that was just one of the issues I had working at CBCS. I got to the point where I just felt like I'm not hitting the numbers. So, I got the impression like I'm going to get fired, and I don't like getting fired. So I kind of just took it upon myself to put in my 2 weeks notice because I wanted to leave on good terms. And then the cool thing was I did briefly get to continue working with CBCS, but I worked as an independent contractor working at conventions, which that's the thing I really liked doing the most. You go to conventions, you're interacting with people, you're helping people, you're giving them information. People are basically asking about like, what's the difference between you and CGC? And they want to submit their books and get it graded, And so doing all that stuff, I actually preferred doing that over grading just because there wasn't really a quota. It was more of a customer service type job, which I've always personally have excelled at. That's my preference of like, if I had to work retail, that's the type of job I want. And so that was fun. It was fun. Like, they paid for the hotel, they give you money for your meals. And then the great thing too is when you have downtime, you can walk the convention, and you have the opportunity. Like if I brought any books for myself to get signed, I get to meet people, I get signatures, I get pictures with them. So that's another thing I would like to figure out how to do, is to just work conventions, full time. Like that would be great. So hopefully I'll get South Tampa Comics going well, get the business running well to the point where we can hire people, and then that could free me up and I can start investing and working in conventions, because I don't mind traveling. I would love to go to like every convention at least once in 1 year,
Yeah.
and then constantly, as I constantly, I'd be like, "Hey, Neil, the hair's looking great," like, which he has. Honestly, in my opinion, he's got a great set of hair, and he actually admitted, he said that, not many people know this, but I cut my own hair, and so I was like, "You're doing a great job, Neil, because the hair looks great,"
That's so Neil too. That's like that would be one of his responses.
Oh,
Like,
yeah, yeah. Not only is he a skilled artist, he's a skilled barber of his own hair.
Well, we're definitely gonna have you back at some point to do like just a deep dive on grading itself. Because
Yeah.
if it's up to me, we just go down that route the rest of the night. But I did want to make sure we touched on. So I know you have a personal collection, and you mentioned seeing the goal being to have all Superman comics. Are there any? I know you've got a large collection, but are there any books you can think of that you're particularly proud of to have in your collection?
So yeah, there's a couple off the top of my head. So I've mentioned before, I'm a big Superman fan, and I have a friend of mine who does private signings with like celebrities. The name of his business, I believe, is called Official Picks. And like, for example, he recently, within the past year, he had a private signing with the entire cast of Rocky. And like he had Sylvester Stallone, Dolph Lundgren, all the side actors. I forget the actress who played his wife. The guy that played her brother. Like you name it. Everyone that's still alive from the Rocky films. They were there for the private signing. And so he got a private signing because hands down, one of my favorite comic book films is Superman the movie with Christopher Reeve, Richard Donner. Obviously, I'm never going to get the opportunity to meet Christopher Reeve. I'm never going to get his signature. I mean, I might be able to buy a signature off of somebody, and hopefully it's a legitimate signature. But I started to like try and meet some of the actors. So I went to like, there's an event called Superman Celebration in Metropolis, Illinois. And it's like on the edge of Kentucky and Illinois. And they do it every year in June. And in fact, this year they have Tom Welling and Michael Rosenbaum doing a signing there. And I'm just like, I wish I could be there, But I went I want to say 80th or 85th anniversary of Superman. I think 85th. And I went there and I got to meet Jeffrey East, who played young Clark Kent in Superman the movie. I met one of the actors who played of the three evil Kryptonians from like Superman 1, Superman 2. I got to meet there's one actor who played like the actual baby, the one that lifts up the car. Aaron Smolensky, I think is his name. I got to meet him. He was super friendly. And I think one other person. And so I got it in my head where I got like a blank cover of Action Comics 1000. And I said, I'm going to try to get as many people who appeared in Superman the movie and get them to sign the book, collect as many signatures as I can. And however, my friend got a private signing with the legendary great Gene Hackman, who played Lex Luthor on Superman. And he's obviously retired from acting. He's at this point in his late 80s, early 90s. So in my mind, I'm like, I don't know how much longer we're going to have Gene Hackman around. I may not have another opportunity to get his signature. So my friend, he lives like in like, I think Claremont, Florida. So I drove all the way out there just to give him the blank cover. And then he had the private signing and he had Gene Hackman sign it. And he wrote Gene Hackman, Lex Luthor, and it ended up costing me basically whatever he was charging for his signature, I had to pay twice just because he put his name and he put Lex Luthor, which I figured it's worth it. How many people are going to have an Action Comics 1000 blank cover signed by Gene Hackman and signed Lex Luthor, and because he also is he can submit to CGC. I got the book graded as well, so I got the yellow label on it to confirm like that's an authentic Gene Hackman signature. So that's one of my all-time favorite books in my collection. The other book is, same thing with Stan Lee. I knew at some point Stan Lee was, going to be gone, and I wanted to make sure I got him to sign a really good Spider-Man book. So I would always watch, and I love the Sam Raimi trilogy. I love Tobey Maguire. I think it's still, in my opinion, hands down the best Spider-Man. But like every time they did like a behind the scenes, especially for Spider-Man 2, they always showed the comic Amazing Spider-Man number 50 where Spider-Man quits, Spider-Man no more. And so I thought to myself, like, that's the book I need to get, because I think one day when I have a family, when I have kids, we'll probably watch that movie, and we'll probably watch the documentary on Stan Lee, and they'll show that cover of that book. And I get to turn to my, son or daughter, and I get to say, I have that book, and it's signed by Stan Lee, and
Wow.
and so I managed to get that book signed by Stan Lee. I ended up buying a graded copy and got it cracked open because I wanted to make sure I had at least a good copy, because there's other people that are selling copies of that book, and you don't know exactly what kind of condition that book is in. So that's one of the great things about graded books, is that that it's roughly whatever that grade is. There's no missing pages, there's no unexpected damage to it. So had it cracked open. I think I spent like $850, maybe $900 for that book. Got it cracked open, got it signed by Stan. I think Stan at that point was charging like $110 for a signature. And then now here's the best part. This is the cherry on top. A couple years, no, 4 years later, maybe 5 years later, here in Tampa at a horror convention, Mr. Sam Raimi, director of the Spider-Man trilogy, was there, and I got him to sign that very same book.
Wow.
And I also got the opportunity to tell Sam straight to his face, like, you're still the best Spider-Man director. Like, no other director has been able to top what he does. And what's great is, like, some part of me wants to believe this, because when I saw him, it was before he signed on to do Doctor Strange. So I kind of hope that when I saw him in line, he just thought to himself, like, wow, there's still people that really love my Spider-Man film, and maybe I should make another comic book film, and maybe that's, you never know.
I think you're right.
That's what
I
I would
support
like
the
to
theory.
think. Yeah.
Wow.
So those are the top two
something.
books.
And those are really unique too.
Oh, yeah.
Really, one of a kind.
That's the goal. Yeah.
All right. So I guess another question is your store. Okay. As we're getting ready to start wrapping things up.
Yeah.
Where is your store currently, and how can people, support your store and
That's a great question.
Yeah.
So our store is located here in Tampa, Florida. We are actually right by MacDill Air Force Base. You can find us on Google Maps. The name of the store that I'm managing is South Tampa Comics. We don't have a website yet, but we are on social media. So we are on Facebook, we are on Instagram, we're on Twitter. I need to manage my time better and finally maybe make a TikTok account, because I know that's the most popular social
All the
media
kids.
out there right now is TikTok. So that's the goal. I want to make some funny, sketch videos and help promote and just, and connect with other. It's amazing how there's a nice number of comic book collectors and fans already on TikTok. So it's a great way to meet other people, talk with other people, and build friends also. And but yeah, the best way to support the store is you can find us on social media. You can like us, you can share us. You can eventually, once we're like, because I like to post new books every week. So we actually had a gentleman from Wisconsin. He saw a couple of the variants that I posted and immediately expressed interest, and he's like, hey, I'm interested in those 2 covers. And I was like, yeah, okay. I told him how much it cost and like how much the shipping was, and he was 100% in support of it. And so my goal is to wake up early tomorrow, make it to the post office, and mail out his books before I get to the store. But yeah, I think the best way to support stores is just liking and sharing is the easiest thing you can do on social media. And I do that a lot. I see a lot of friends, a lot of people, even people who are artists and writers who do Kickstarters. Even if I don't have the money to support them I'm still going to like the post. I'm still going to share it, because the people within my circle, you never know, it could be one person that's like, hey, this looks great. Like, I want to, I want to support, I want to purchase this, I want to buy this,
Right.
but and then just keep following us on social media, and as we keep growing, and as we do sales, we do deals, and eventually once we have a website set up or even an eBay account, you can purchase books from us, and that's another great way of supporting.
Well, that all sounds great, and we'll be sure when we post this to include links to all, website and such, and social media. And
Thank you.
this has been a real joy, Randall. We've really enjoyed having you. And like I said, we got to have you on, whether it's to talk about grading or books and all that. I feel like we could do several videos with you. You have consider yourself an open invitation to come on again if you'd like.
Fantastic. I love talking about comic books. In fact, one of my goals in life is to convert half the people in the United States into liking comic books and reading comic books. It's a major goal. I don't know if I'll be able to accomplish it, but I'm going to keep trying.
You know what, Randall? Here's a question that we can dive into even more the next time around.
Yeah.
But just quickly, what's your favorite Batman movie?
Man, that's a tough one. Growing up as a kid, if I really had no choice but to choose one, actually, no, Batman: Mask of the Phantasm. Like the Batman animated series is hands down the greatest adaptation of Batman on film and television. And a strong second for me, just because I grew up as a kid and I watched it over and over again, was Batman 1989. However, I have to mention Christopher Nolan. I have to mention the Dark Knight trilogy. Obviously the Dark Knight, like some people look at that movie and they'll be like, oh, it's overhyped, which I can agree with. But, excluding the hype, you can still recognize that, it's a great film, great performances, great writing, great directing. You don't get that very often in comic book films. So
Right.
I like to mention that movie, but of course, Jack Nicholson's one of the greatest actors ever, so like for him to play the Joker, so much love goes to Batman 1989. But once again, Batman the Animated Series with Mark Hamill, the legendary Mark Hamill is the Joker. Like, they are the quintessential like Batman and Joker, and it's I'm very happy and very fortunate enough when I was a kid that I got to see that movie in the theater, and just growing up watching that animated series. It's just, I'm so glad, and I got to meet Kevin Conroy as well too.
Nice.
And
Is that?
very nice guy, very tall too. Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, Tyler here, he's a Batman fan. As you can see all the posters behind him.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I've said it before. I feel like Batman should be like everybody's automatic favorite DC character.
Yeah.
Just because
I would
like
agree.
he's just that popular character. Like he's not my personal favorite character, but I can tell you that I've got probably hundreds, maybe even thousands of Batman comics in my collection. Because he's just a great character overall, very well written, very well drawn, and they generally get the best talent working on that character.
Yeah.
I would love it though if they could share that same love with all the other characters that DC has. Hopefully
yeah.
crossing fingers one day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You notice that like I forget how many titles DC has right now, but
Yeah,
more than half of them are Batman.
the Batman family. Like
We're
I'm
going
starting
to-
to notice Nightwing is appearing in a lot of other books as well too. Like it's almost to the point where like now Nightwing might end up getting the same popularity as Batman, and so you'll see like 10 Batman books and you'll see 10 Nightwing books, and it's like,
Yeah.
for the fans of those characters, I'm sure they're like, they want more. Like,
Give the
10's
market
like,
what
I
it
want
wants. Give the
money.
market what it wants.
Exactly.
But I want more freedom fighters. You know what I mean?
Yes.
Like I love stuff like that.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, that's another dream of mine one day, is to work for DC Comics, even if I'm an editor or a writer. Like, I would love to be able to play in that sandbox, and contribute to the history and the future of DC. To be a part of like that prestigious publisher. As a Superman fan, I have to. My goal is to get one Superman story. And I love what Marvel did in the early 2000s when you had the Ultimate Universe. So if ever given the opportunity to work at DC, I'm going to want to create my own Ultimate Universe. I want my own continuity. I want to do a reimagining, a modern telling of Superman, Batman, and all the other Justice League characters. You know, like so. But I mean, oftentimes I also think maybe I'll never get to work for DC. So whatever stories and ideas I have, I should just create my own characters and maybe go through like Kickstarter and build my own publishing line. Maybe, you know. Just gotta find some good artists that are generous and humble and kind enough to work for lower than what they normally charge for their rates to get these books made. You know, like that would be really cool.
Yeah. Oh, this has been great. We have so much potential. If you ever want to come back and you know, just any topic in the world, this comic book world, that is, be happy to talk with you about. But again, thank you so much for coming, Randall. We really enjoyed it.
Oh, thank you for having me. Like, I always enjoy talking to people about comics, so this was fun, you know, and I look forward to finding out what we're going to talk about next.
So that's a yes. He's coming back, folks.
Yes.
Oh, that's a definite yes. Yes.
All right. Well, that's all we got. See you guys.
All right. Thank you.
All right.